You are listening to the Horse Radio Network, part of the Equine Network family.
This is episode 141 of the Wisdom by WESA show on the Horse Radio Network. This is Mike Donnell.
I'm Casey Wilbanks.
And this is Sofia Yagela. Welcome to Wisdom by WESA on the Horse Radio Network, part of the Equine Network family.
This podcast is brought to you by the Western and English Sales Association, WESA, which provides the world's largest trade events for retailers, manufacturers, and sales representatives of the equestrian industry. In this podcast, we feature exclusive interviews with noteworthy Western and English personalities, retailers, and exhibitors who you've always wanted to talk to. Don't miss out on all the news for manufacturers and retailers in the equine industry. As retail buyers are gearing up for the January WESA trade show, Sophia, what is the best way to get in touch if they have any questions?
Amy Dill is their direct contact, and she's always happy to help anyone. She is our executive director, so there really isn't a better person to contact at WESA. So they can call our 800 number or email adill@wesatradeshow.com, but they can also DM us on social media at WESA Trade Show across platforms, for example, Instagram and Facebook.
What's one of the most common questions you receive from retailers?
I'd say how to get badges is probably the most frequently asked question. The short process is explained on our website, but again, we're happy to walk anybody through the registration process if they contact us. But just to quickly summarize, you start by creating an account on wesatradeshow.com, submit a few documents, basically just proving you own or buy for a Western English store. After the approval, you can register online for free. And just a quick reminder, the pre-registration ends on December 31st.
That is coming up very, very soon. What other resources can you share with everybody?
So many resources. You can choose among the website, for example, the FAQs for more kind of quick answers. Then we also publish editorials. You, of course, have the retail roundup, but then we also have the app, the directory, and on-site monitors. And I always mention this, but it really does come in handy. Downloading the app is my number one tip. So just make sure you download the free WESA Trade Show app today.
Jennifer Palmer, a former school teacher and the wife of a horse trainer, had a strong belief that there was a market for contoured show blankets in the cutting and reining world, so she designed some. And today, Cuttin Up show blankets, which markets to retailers and online to trainers and competitors throughout the country. Recently, the company introduced a brand new product line featuring blankets with a built-in pad, which will be marketed to barrel racers and ropers. Jennifer joins us today to bring us up to date. Well, Jennifer Palmer, thanks so much for taking time out of what I know is a very busy day for you to talk to us at Wisdom by WESA.
Well, thank you for having me.
I mean, this is going to be a fun show. It always is. For our audience's benefit, Jennifer and I had a little conversation before the show, so I know a little bit more about her business and how the things we want to emphasize. But it's an interesting story in that this isn't, you're not someone who grew up in the business world or running companies or whatever. You had a belief. And
Right.
that belief was that there was a role and a market for contoured show saddles. Your husband, who is a trainer, said there wasn't. And today you've got a successful business. Why don't you kind of walk us through that whole process?
So we produce contoured show blankets.
I'm sorry. What did I say?
Saddles. That's okay.
Oh, well.
Thank God the saddles were already contoured. But so before we brought our product to the market, what was used in the show world before was basically a rug woven to the dimensions to cover what we call an underpad, or some people would call a work pad, that the people usually would work their horses in, that is not very pretty on a day-to-day basis. And then when it comes time to show, they put this cover over it to make the pretty picture, basically. Because when we're performing, especially at judged events, we want to look pretty, look good. And everything before us was basically a rug. So it was just flat, where ours it has a curve built into the pattern. And so it lifts at the withers and then the rear, just like the horse's back does, and just like the underside of your saddle does, which means there's no bundle of wool mess or anywhere. It's just seamless.
Well, I mean, the concept is that it fits differently, but it looks good. And
Yes.
I think that's probably one of the key selling points. Let's talk a bit about the creative side. I'm going to have Casey join in here in a minute because she's put on far more saddle pads and blankets than I have in her life and still does. But to me, it's not only the physical design of the product, but as you said, people want to look good while they're showing their horses. And you've really kind of emphasized that as part of your product line. So I mean, if you look on the website, there's all sorts of designs there, but where do those come from? And then let's talk about how they get produced.
Okay. So the way to sell a lot of show blankets is to bring lots of different options, lots of different patterns, because different people have different tastes. Some disciplines want to change their shirt every, type of event, what have you. So they need different color schemes. I grew up in the cutting horse industry, and that is the industry in which our contoured show blankets boomed in. And our thing is really just pattern and look for that particular horse. And so what we do is I collect pattern. Show blankets are built differently than flat blankets, as well as in that structurally there are certain aspects that cannot be done in a contour show blanket for appearance that can be done in a flat blanket. But anyway, so because of that, I collect what I call inspiration photos. It could be a pattern in a vase. It could be a pattern in a jacket. Or one of our most recent patterns was on the morning show on Apple TV. I saw some cool curtains in the background and panned in and got a snapshot of the curtains in the background on the television. Anyway, so I gather all these and then we send them over and we do what we call as our test patterns. And they do roughly around 100 test patterns or so a year, and they ship them over to us at the same time. And then we select which ones we want to put into production based on those patterns.
So how many of a specific pattern would you produce?
So we only produce 50 of each. We make two different sizes because due to the contour shape, and they fit differently and to accommodate all different styles of horses. So we make so many in the small size, usually 15 in the small size and 35 in the big size. And then once those are sold, that pattern goes into what we call retirement.
Oh, really? So if I buy one of those 50, there's not going to be another 1,000 coming along behind me that looks just like it.
Yeah, no. Once those 50 are gone, they're gone forever. The only way you can find them is if you find somebody that's willing to sell it, part with it.
Okay. And so how many patterns have you had since you started the company in, I think, 2019?
Yeah, a lot. I don't even know off the top of my head. The first 2 years, we didn't do the 50 cap. We didn't start that until just like barely 2020. But we had to, because we were so new and variety is what sells the blankets, we just made a whole bunch of patterns. So we probably made 300 or 400 patterns the first 2 years. Granted, those are not capped out as far as the 50. Since then, each pattern lineup can be 35 to this last one we did in the spring was 52 different patterns. So it's a big number.
Well, it is a big number, and I promise to go to Casey, but if I'm a retailer, and I go on the website and I see some patterns I think would sell in my market, I've got to compete for a portion of those 50 saddle pads?
Yes and no. We open pre-orders for a period of time. And generally, and since there's so many patterns, not all retailers serve the same markets. Some retailers serve cutters, some serve ranch horses, some serve pleasure. But so there's always a decent variety to accommodate the tastes of your clientele per se. So it spreads pretty far. I mean, when you're talking about, 10 patterns, that's 500 blankets. So it's, and we're talking, we produce more than usually more 30-ish or more in a pattern set. So it is a competition, but it's not as what you would, it's not a scary competition in that sense as far as to get the product.
That's fair enough. Casey, it's time for you to jump in here because you know more about saddle blankets than I do.
Well, that and jewelry, I guess. Huh, Mike?
That and jewelry.
Let's talk about the longevity of your pads. A few things, just the life expectancy of them and possibly getting the most out of them and how to really care for them and utilize them as long as possible.
Yeah. So our original Cuttin ups, and we haven't even talked about the different things we've spun off on with the type blanket products, but our typical Cuttin up is probably going to last. That's our contoured show blanket around 10 years or so, depending on what discipline you use them in. Some disciplines use them every time they walk to the herd or every time they go to compete. Some disciplines use them for like the ranch pleasure or whatever, each class, and it doesn't get used very often. Some use it with one particular shirt, and anytime they wear that shirt, they wear that blanket. So it really just depends on what discipline it is to however long it'll last. Our premium product that we haven't discussed yet is a tighter woven contour blanket. It took us several years for us to get to build that, to learn the techniques to build the premium blanket. Those are based off of some blankets we used to get that were flat back in the late 80s and early 90s in the cutting horse industry. They're very, very tightly woven and they are very, very thin. And we were only able to get them for a very short period, maybe 6-8 years in that period. And there are still people using those blankets today. And that's like 30-40 years away down the road. So the premium will obviously have a very, very long life, but the Cuttin ups, the original one, we expect those to be around a 10-year period or so.
I could get me one of those and it'd last for the rest of my life, Mike.
Right.
Well,
you're going to be able to, but we're going to get to that. Go on and continue where you are.
Yeah, let's talk about the techniques of making those different kinds of blankets. And I'm interested in knowing, is it on a loom or, just a different way to create that?
Mm-hmm. So that was kind of what is our spin-off, I guess, of them. When I finally argued with them enough to try and go ahead and start making these, they had to go back to the old hand looms. Just a little show blanket or saddle blanket history. Most, I would say probably 95% of the blankets purchased in the US, flat blankets, any show blanket, I guess, is produced in India. They used to get them, outsource them in Ukraine, but that's not so much anymore. But those are made on what they call automatic looms. And that sounds like it's super advanced. No, it's still hand woven. It's just, there's devices on them that make them more automatic, but it's still hand woven by a human being. But ours are produced on the looms prior to that, which were the older style hand looms. And then they built this curved thing that they actually inserted on it. And then they build the top level of the blanket around that curve device. And with that, everything at most of the factories over there had transitioned away from these looms. So when we started building them and they started playing with them, at first they couldn't get any print or where the saddle sits. We had to take all the pattern out of the top part of it. And as they built them, they figured out how to add more and more detail. And now almost our entire blankets can have a good amount of detail. But when they realized that this was getting huge, we needed to produce more. And so he went around, the gentleman that I work with over there went around and started buying up those old hand looms from the other factories so that we could meet the demands. Anyway, so they're built on an entirely different loom than flat blankets, and they're hard to find because of that.
The quality would just be amazing. And so it makes me wonder if somebody wants to purchase one, how do they spot an authentic?
Okay, so the authentics are different. They are that tighter weave, and authentics have completely different patterns than the cut-and-ups do. The cut-and-ups are we do like I described before, where I do the test patterns all year or collect those, and then we select which ones we want to produce, and then we name them and put those to production. The authentics are all based off of historic patterns. Native American art. I research the different Native American groups on Facebook and what have you, and I collect and we produce those from there. Now, the authentics, we only make 50 patterns a year in those, and we only make one in each size. So there are only 100 authentics made each year, period. They have tassels in the corners. We put our tags under on the underside on the withers instead of on the top of the upper side on the withers like we do in the cut-and-ups. And they're numbered, and they come with a certificate of authenticity. They are not super popular in anything else really but the cutting horse industry. Cutters typically buy a blanket for that horse for its entire career. And those are typically the shoppers for those. Those retail for $1,000 versus our cut-and-ups that have a minimum retail pricing of $240. So it's a big difference in price range too, but it's very, very, very exclusive product.
What is the best way to care for your blankets?
So Scotch Guard, there are dry cleaners that will clean them. They're a little harder to find, especially since we put a wither patch on them of leather. They worry about that. But Scotch guarding every 3 months or so is the best way without cleaning them. When you do dry clean them and move them, it kind of breaks down the fibers of the wool. So it's better if we don't clean them. But if they get really dirty and you want them cleaned, dry clean only.
And don't use water. Don't use a water hose.
No. There are some colors that will bleed, and we never know for sure which ones there are going to be the bleeders and which ones are not, because they're all that's another part of it is people want to be asked all the time, are they New Zealand wool? Are they this? Are they that kind of wool? No, I'm not going to tell you that they're one particular kind of wool, because different wools just absorb different colors differently. And so depending on the color of each blanket will determine what the best wool is for that blanket. And so, like I said, you don't know which color might bleed. So don't run water on it.
So if you're looking for more verification that these are quality blankets, I think the sponsored riders and the associations that you are partnered with will speak for itself. And obviously you can't talk about each and every one of them. There are multiple, but I would love for you to talk about your relationship and your partnerships with those sponsored riders and some of the associations.
Well, the largest one is NCHA. I grew up in the cutting horse industry, and the cutters, when we launched these blankets, made us. I mean, we exploded, and then in turn trickled into the cow horse industry, because those are two like sister sort of disciplines. And so NCHA's sponsorship is outstanding as far as what we do, that we make 3 specific patterns that they own in Authentics each year. And so each Triple Crown champion receives a authentic show blanket in their Triple Crown pattern. And then each world champion receives a whole different pattern for the world champions. And then they have a circuit finals champions, and they have that pattern in that one as well. We recently joined up with American Paint Horse Association, and they do theirs a little different. They give certificates to their whichever classes and stuff that they want to give awards in, and that then their members are able to choose from any of the products we make. Like we make duffels with the blankets, we make satchels and totes and rugs, and so they are able to use their certificates not just for blankets but for some of the other products too. There's a very long list of associations.
Yes, there's a lot. And I would like to mention one, the American Rope Horse Fraternity Association. It was started by Jay and Lindsay Wadhams, that was originally from right here in Pueblo, Colorado, where I reside. And the reason I want to mention that, it is growing and growing, and it's just really where it's at. These rope horse fraternities are just going to keep growing and getting bigger. So you're partnered with somebody, and not just them, a lot of associations that have a long-standing history and a continued future of longevity. So,
yeah. Well, and the rope horse deal too, with them creating the fraternities, and that's why I wanted to back that, was it's becoming then more of a show event because they're judged. And I see that I feel like there will be that transition to more show blankets, more worrying about what they look like, where roping traditionally has not been so worried about having the prettiest blankets in the world on their rope courses. But I feel
it's changing.
Like that is that shift, and they've done a fabulous job. That association is amazing. And so I wanted to be a part of that. And we have just introduced a new product this year that is it has the underpad built into it as well. We partnered with 3S Custom Equine. That product, when we get where we can have more product in hand to be able to sponsor with, that is where I'm gearing that actual product is for the American Rope Horse Fraternity Association.
That's awesome. So one thing I'm gathering from all of this, if you become a retailer of your products, so much information and knowledge behind it to help them sell to the best of their ability.
Yes. We try to make it fun. We try to, like our test patterns, when they come each year, we do a test pattern sell where we kind of advertise them first, and then let the retailers, we draw for whoever gets to purchase what, and pump up the retailers that participated in that. We also have a trade back program with the show blankets, where if a retailer purchases 10 blankets and when they get them, say only 5 of them appealed to their actual clientele, they can, when they want to order new blankets, they can return the 5 blankets that didn't sell in their area and replenish with something new in stock. And so it works out good. It just costs the shipping, which, I mean, there's good and bad to that, but that way they don't ever get stuck with blankets. And then in turn, what we do with those is we sponsor events with them. And we have a built-in pricing for show producers and show secretaries and associations anyway, that's just a smidge over wholesale. And those blankets go to those types of programs. So it's a win-win for the retailers, and it's a win-win for supporting our horse industry too.
Absolutely. And Mike said he doesn't use horse blankets, but you also have area rugs. So if he wants to spruce up his office, there is something for everybody after all.
Yes, and the rugs are produced in the authentic patterns. So if they miss out on those 2 blankets that are available in authentic and just love it, those are what we produce the rugs in. So
there's a Christmas gift for your wife, Mike.
Oh, there you go.
I got you.
Oh, thank you. She'll thank you.
Mike, I know you do not use saddle blankets. However, you always have very great input from the business and the marketing side. So
well, I mean, I'm sitting here listening to this, and it's so impressive because it's not like you went to school, got a business degree, worked for a big brand, decided to spin off and open your own. I mean, you had an idea, but what's impressive is not only are you the creative force, I mean, what's this blanket going to look like? And let's do these and these and these. But as you go through the merchandising and marketing programs that you've thought through for the retailer, and you go through the programs that you have for your sponsored contestants and for the associations. So you're providing the entire role of being a manager of a growing small business. Although I think you started with, you wanted an idea of something that would look good, and now you're doing great. Now you and I talk, and I'm not going to push, but everybody we talk to on this show who are creative entrepreneurs, whatever, they always have something else up their sleeve. I will tell you that Jennifer told me she does, but she won't tell me what it is, so she won't tell you what it is. But I think we're all going to be watching to see what's coming next out of her company, both in terms of product idea and marketing idea. And Jennifer, I've enjoyed tremendously chatting with you and listening to the enthusiasm that you approach this business and the breadth of your thinking in terms of this for retailers, these for shows, these for competitors. I mean, congratulations. You're doing a great job.
No, thank you. I appreciate it. I won't take credit for it at all. This was never a plan. It just, God put it on us and we did it. And I know people say that all the time, but literally I never intended to build this business. God made it. So it is.
Well,
what
he created the opportunity, but you've made it happen.
Well, thanks to him.
Thanks to him. I won't argue. Who would argue with that?
Yes.
Anyway, hey, thanks for the time. We've enjoyed it. Show notes and links from today's show can be found at wisdombywesa.com. And if you've got feedback, we'd love to hear it. There's a contact link on that website.
The Wisdom by WESA show will be published on the 15th and 30th of every month. You can listen on most of your favorite podcast players, and you can also listen on wisdombywesa.com. Be sure to visit all the great shows on the Horse Radio Network at horseradionetwork.com. WESA, where the industry meets.